Welcome back to another episode of the YA podcast. I'm Ryan Keaton, again here with Lorenzo Baylor. Lorenzo, how you doing?
What's up? I'm good. You know, we are we're in here now.
Yeah, we're several episodes in.
Yeah, how you feeling about it?
Man, I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm happy. We finally got this out. This has been a long time in the works. So.
Yeah, and I love the conversations we've been having around the book, and you know, we encourage you to read the book in its entirety. You know, we've kind of hit some highlights, but read the book. But I love the conversations that we've been having. I feel like people are going to be really helped and really blessed by what's come out of this. You know, I'm great. I'm really excited.
Yeah,
if you can't tell.
Yeah, it's been good stuff. If you haven't listened to any other podcast episode before, go back and after this one and listen to some of the episodes and keep an eye out because we have more coming out over the next few weeks. And man, these are practitioners. These aren't people who just theorize young adult ministry. They're in the grind every day. In
the trenches.
That's
every
right.
day, going, doing the Lord's work.
That's right.
It's beautiful.
We got full-time, big church, small church, bivocational. We got a lot of different aspects. We got dads, we got husbands, we got fathers. I mean, it's just, we got people who, I mean, they see this, they are young adults or they work with young adults. We're young adults, maybe.
We are.
Depending on who you ask.
Depending on who you ask. I might just be a regular old adult at this point, but I feel young.
Southern Baptist life, we're still on the bottom.
We're still babies in Southern Baptist life.
Bottom corner of young adult life. So this week, Love Matters, Chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
Man, what a good chapter.
Yeah.
John Bingham wrote it, and looking forward to hearing his perspective of it at some point. But man, Chapter 5, good stuff. And I mean, love is, again, it's one of those topics that we all experience it, we all want it, but sadly, so many times in the church, it's void.
It is. And what's interesting is, like we've said a few times before, I think everybody would agree that love matters. Everybody would agree that you should love your neighbor, all of the things that the Bible teaches us. But when you look at a day-to-day, like just practical application of that, you find that it's harder than you think to love somebody that, isn't in direct contact with you or isn't in your sphere, or somebody that you don't like that much.
That's right.
So, but it's our charge and it's our command to do so. But the day-to-day actual application of that can be tricky.
Yeah. So we've both experienced this, and I'd love to hear your experience as you were a young adult. You moved from the town, the church you grew up in. You're in a new community right here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
As a young adult, looking to get plugged in, looking to serve, looking for a new community of friends and church family.
Yeah.
What were your experiences with that? Was it hard to find a new faith community? What were you looking for in that faith community? And what drew you ultimately to the church that you landed in and that you're serving in right now?
Yeah. So coming from St. Louis is where I'm from. I think I've mentioned that in prior episodes, but coming from St. Louis to Nashville was tougher than I thought. And I moved here with no family. I went from an environment where family was heavily concentrated. Everywhere you look, I could hit a cousin, hit an uncle, hit an aunt, whatever it was, to being hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the nearest blood relative that I had. And so it was challenging. And anybody that moves to a new city or does anything new, the beginning of it is very just exciting. You're like, okay, I'm here. Now what? You're looking for the big explosion or all the fireworks. But then once you settle down and things kind of start to get quiet and you start to kind of, get into somewhat of a routine, that's when you start noticing, oh man, I don't have much of a community around me right now. And that's what kind of happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I moved to a new city, had a new job, and was kind of doing that every day and just kind of feeling that out. So I didn't really pay much attention early on. For like the first, few weeks, it was kind of just trying to feel out being in a new situation. It wasn't until after those kind of that few weeks period, and I met, I had a friend that lived here, and he had a family, so I didn't really get to see him that often. And then another friend who lives in Murfreesboro, so I didn't really get to see him that often because he never really came to the city, and I was living pretty much in Nashville. And so for the most part, I was kind of going to work, coming home, I go to church. My friend introduced me to the church I go to, and I went, and I would see him sometimes, depending on the service that I went to. But I was just kind of going to church, coming back home, going to work, coming back home. And I realized how lonely I was. And I never felt that before because I was always around people my whole life. And so it was tricky. It was tricky to navigate. And I remember, not that I ever thought about like going back home, but you miss that. And so I'm calling home every 5 minutes, talking to my sister, talking to uncles, talking to friends, my god brother at the time. I would talk to him, constantly, just because, I had no one else to kind of reach out to. And so it wasn't until maybe like 6 months in is where I have a funny story. I'll back up a little bit. At my church, we have this thing called DNA, which basically means I go to the Belonging Co. I'm proud of I love my church, so I'll say give a shout out to the Belonging. I go to the Belonging Co. here in Nashville, and at the Belonging we have a thing called DNA, which is basically a way for people that are new to get kind of connected with the heart of the church, the vision of the church. You hear where it started and things like that. So at the time, there was a summer session. I don't think they had done a summer session before. And so they decided to do this summer session of DNA. And I went in saying, okay, I'm going to make a friend. I'm going to make a friend, And so I go. It's a 4-week kind of course you go through. And so the first week I go and I meet a guy, and he was cool. I don't remember his name, but he was cool. And I'm like, okay, cool. We're gonna sit together and strike up a conversation. Maybe get hang out or something like that, whatever. And I remember talking to him, and we chatted after the service was over. Maybe like a quick chat, and I went home. And I'm like, cool. Come back next week, see him again, and I'll have a new friend. Came back that next week, didn't see him. So saw another guy. I said, I'm gonna try it again. So talked to, sat with him. We struck up a conversation after everything was done, and I don't even think I exchanged information with him. I don't think. But I left, and hoping that I'll see him the following week. This is a Monday, 2018. On my way to work. It's a Monday morning. Engine blows on my car on my way to work. I'm stuck on the side of the highway. And so I missed that week's DNA. And then, so now I'm like, now what? Supposed to be making friends. I'm trying to build a community, so forth and so on. And the following week, I traveled back to St. Louis, and I took the Greyhound bus, the worst Greyhound bus trip of my life. It was rough. I left super late at night, and I think there was an issue. The bus was delayed, and then he took like the long way around, so it took me hours to get home. I think I got home that following, like something like 6:00 in the morning. I left at like maybe 2 or 1 o'clock or something like that. And so I had that experience. Had to get another car because the car that the engine blew was done for. So I missed the last week of DNA. And so now I'm feeling kind of, down about it. Moved all the way to Nashville with the vision, feeling like doing what the Lord's called me to do, and I'm struggling to just connect in any way. And then people are giving you all this advice like this, you should do this, you should go here. I had people come visit me and they're like, this is how you get connected. They're trying to teach me how to network and do all these things, but it doesn't feel natural to who I am. And so I feel like this story's gone long. You can stop me.
You're good. Yeah, no, this is good.
And so I ended up about 6 months living here, and we had our connect groups starting back up. So I wandered into a house that I didn't know where I was at. I just kind of looked at areas that were close to me. If anybody knows, I know got a lot of Tennesseans listening to this. Anybody knows the Nashville area? At that time I was living in the Antioch area, and so that's where this connect group was. So I wandered into this house and saw this group of people and didn't know anybody, but I just went charging in, and from that moment on is when my community really started to just take off. And then fast forward 2 years, global pandemic, can't see anybody. So that was a tough time. That was a tough time in terms of a lot of things going on. There was a lot of things kind of just going on, and we don't have to really go into a lot of that, but there's just a lot going on in our country, a lot going on in the world. And so that really shifted a lot of things in my life, shifted a lot of things, how I saw things around me, and so in that is kind of where I really connected with more people that were going to our church, and I found out of that my community expanded tremendously. So now I have this and that the couple that was leading that connect group at that time have since kind of moved on. They moved to a new city, but now I'm kind of left still with this abundance of just people who are pretty much like family to me now. This group I go to the gym with every morning, 5:15 a.m. We go
grind.
The grind. We went this morning, 5:15 a.m. And I got friends that we hang the same group. We hang out. I hang out. I'm not married with kids. They're for the most part all married. Most of them with kids. I hang out at their friends' party. They call me Uncle Renzo. And so it's just like a real family environment. And so getting back to love matters, what you don't realize is the importance of feeling loved and feeling like you are connected with somebody who really cares about you, especially when you're kind of going through a tough time, moving to a new city, you don't know anybody, and it's how important it is for, and this is on a side note, it's almost like now new people come to our church, and I feel this kind of personal mandate to just kind of come around them, because I know how it felt to come to a new space and come to a new place and not know anybody. So now I see somebody new. I just met somebody new this past Sunday, and my attitude was, they introduced me like, this person is new. They're going to one of the schools here in town, and they've just kind of been looking for a church. And my thing was, man, you will never come here and not have somebody to sit with. You'll never come here and not have somebody to connect with, as long as I'm here, because I know how it feels to come in and not feel like you're connected with somebody, and it can be lonely.
Yeah. I know that, a lot of our listeners may be staff, so they've moved churches, but a lot of lay leaders, they have really never experienced that because they grew up in the church as a child, and So they would say, well, my church is friendly, my church is loving, and you are to the ones who you grew up with or who's from there. But man, I know firsthand the coming in as an outsider.
Yeah.
And yeah, the church is real friendly to each other, but you just feel like you're showing up at somebody else's family reunion and you're not a part of that family, you know, like people kind of look at you like, why are you here? Who are you? Like, don't get all the potato salad before me, you know, type thing. Like,
have you ever had a situation where, what was your experience like coming into a new? I know you're at First Lexington now.
Yeah.
But that's not the church you grew up in, right?
No. So I was that person. I grew up in church, knew everybody. Everybody knew me. I mean, at one point, my great grandmother was the oldest, longest living member of the church, of my home church. And so I grew up small rural church that was just, you know, killing it for the kingdom, being faithful in their community, but it, you know, wasn't in a city like Nashville.
Yeah.
Shout out Sylvia. And so, so when I went to college and I'm in a bigger town and I'm looking to get plugged in, you know, I knew I was called to ministry, and so the first couple of churches, it was just overwhelming. One, because the sizes of them were a lot bigger than what I was used to.
Yeah.
And then just looking out across the sea of faces, it was like, man, I don't know anybody. And my whole life, I've known every single person when I look across the room pretty much. And so it was overwhelming. It's like, I don't even know where to start in trying to find community. And then really just God opening the door, I kind of backed into a service position at First Lexington. And, I mean, a lot of people can probably resonate with this. Lexington is in no way a college town. And so me and my wife now, we were the minority as far as, you know, there wasn't a ton of college age students sticking around. They may come to Sunday morning service, but there really wasn't much else for us. And so we found our community being either, because I was serving in the student ministry, either the students' parents or the students themselves, but there was really nobody like our age.
Yeah.
And so our community was different, but yeah, we kind of landed in those same roles. Like we became, you know, kind of aunts and uncles to the students who we were pouring into, just because we started hanging out with their parents, and their parents are still some of our greatest friends. But I just know, like, we don't do it so much anymore, but we used to do the, you know, everybody go around and shake hands with everybody, which is, you know, still happening in a lot of churches. But that was, again, one of the loneliest times in the church, because it's like, well, the people who just spent all the time shaking hands and talking before church just went around and shook the same hands. Yeah. And you may have some people walk up and, you know, give a casual whatever, but it just, man, it makes you feel like, am I really like making a difference here? Do people really care whether I'm here or not? And I mean, the idea of just love and feeling that community is something that kind of you mentioned. It's not that young adults aren't looking for it, but just life happens sometimes. The cars do break down. You do have to go back home to family and visit. And so it's not that you're not being unfaithful to church attendance. It's just life happened. Yeah. And, you know, one thing that stuck out to me about your story was your church had layers of connectivity. Yeah. Where you had the DNA class and you had connect groups and you had service, and it was just like layered up so that you may fell through one gap, but another net caught you.
That's true.
And so if churches don't have those layers of love or of connectivity, I mean, we can't be super surprised when young adults do fall through the gaps, because life happens. Yeah. Life is very transitory. It's the same thing for me. I mean, I'm not from Lexington, and so there are weeks when I want to go and be at my home church with my family, or, you know, there's birthdays or family reunions or deaths that I still have to travel, you know, an hour and a half from where I live now. And so if churches aren't willing to be mindful of, you know, they may not be from here. Yeah. And then looking for, you know, if somebody is new or different, there's two ways it normally happens. Either they're ignored or they're put so much on a pedestal that it's awkward. Yeah. And so trying to find that middle ground where it's not like, wow, like this is my first time here, and it's like you almost like spotlight me, and it's like, way more attention than I want. Yeah, like, ugh. Or just like, man, everybody. I've even been a guest speaker before, and so like, you would think if anybody's going to make somebody feel welcome, it's the guest speaker, and it's just like, man, really? Like,
nobody?
Yeah. Like, it's crazy. It happens more than I would care to
So
admit.
you go in to preach, but nobody really talks to you?
No, like the music person or whoever's the key person will come up, but the rest of the church is just like,
Yeah.
we're keeping our distance. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, it's just one of those things. And so we just have to really, and again, it goes back to what you said. We have to try to put ourselves in that place. And so if you've not been that person who's had to move churches, maybe this is a foreign concept to you. And so this is like the glass shatters in your mind and you're like, oh man, I never even thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But if you are that person who has been transitory, man, I'm in the same boat. I never want somebody to feel maybe some of the ways that I did.
Yeah.
And I'm excited now that Lexington does have so many more layers of community for this young adult age group, but it didn't happen overnight.
It did not. And that's the tough thing. Like, you know, you want to walk into, at least I'll just speak for myself. You want to walk into a situation, you want to walk into a church, you want to walk into, you know, somewhere and it's like that show Cheers where everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
You want it to be like that. You want everybody to, you want to fast forward the process of connecting. But it takes time.
Yeah.
And it took me, you know, I walked into that Connect group and forged some lifelong friendships. However, what I have now, I will say this, what I have now in terms of just the complete kind of thing of just, you know, having people you know you can call on, know you can depend on, and know that I'm 5 years here in Nashville. I probably have had that over the last 2 to 3 years. It took a good 2 years to really establish, relationships in that way. And I would encourage anybody that has just moved to a new place, if you've just moved here to Tennessee, or if you listen to this, you just moved to where you are. Give it time, and it's not gonna be easy at first. It's not gonna be easy in the beginning, because, you know, the thing that you're looking for is only gonna come when it is kind of tried, and not necessarily in a negative way, but even in just a way of where you have time to really break down walls and get to the heart of who people are. And those things take time. You know, there's a thing that people say a lot in dating where they say if you meet somebody new, 9 times out of 10 you're talking to their representative and not the actual individual. Yeah. And I feel like that's true in most relationship interactions, whether it be dating relationship or friendship. A lot of times you're talking to that person's representative. You know, you're not necessarily talking to them. You know, they're smiling, putting on the, you know, not even that it's fake. It's just, you know,
they're putting their best foot forward.
Yeah, they're putting their best foot forward. So it takes time to really get to the heart of who somebody is. And so, I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to be the one that, has been somewhere, all their life, and you have this kind of set crew that you're with, and, it might be challenging to just bring somebody in on that. I would encourage that person, you may need to extend yourself a little bit. You may need to extend a hand out to let someone know, like, hey, you don't have to be alone, and not that you have to, invite them into every, dark corner of your life. But however, being able to just reach out a hand and let somebody know, like, hey, you have a place here. It could go a long way. And I've had people that I've invited to different things that, my friends were having. And out of that, they've developed their own relationships within, said community, and so, and it's branched off into these other things. So you just never know. But it can be tough. It can be tough.
And it's sad that, intentional, direct, display of love can be awkward sometimes.
Yeah.
Or like when somebody is like just so friendly and so nice and tries to be so welcoming, at least for me,
it could be weird.
You're like, first reaction is like, what are they trying to?
Yeah, what do you want?
Yeah, what do you want? What's your motive? And I think that's just the cynical nature of what our world and our culture has become. But like, I've met those people. I'm like, why are they so nice? And it's like, why
not?
Why aren't we? And then that impacts so many aspects of life. I was talking about this to our Sunday school class a couple of weeks ago, because the study we're walking through right now is looking at different relationships through the Bible. Yeah. And I was just like, it's sad that if I were to text one of you after this and just be like, man, I'm super proud of you. I think you're killing it. It could be like not taken as the genuineness that it would be, or that's rare. Yeah. Like, why isn't that happening more often? That we just can, like, I don't know. I know for myself, I'm just so busy so many times. I just forget that people need encouragement. People need that love. That's and right. You may be thinking it, but I mean, when's the last time you wrote somebody a letter and was just like, thank you so much for the impact you've had on my life. Like the mentorship you had, or that moment where I was going through a hard time and you spoke to me. Like, I think love would be easier in our congregations if we acknowledged it more. True. And we push it under the rug. And I know, like, being in student ministry, and I still get this label attributed some at First Lexington, but now that I've been there 13 or so years, it's not as much. But at the beginning, people would say, like, man, like, Ryan puts himself in awkward situations. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, because students are awkward. Yeah. And so if you're not willing to sit in that awkwardness sometimes and just say, like, I really don't know what to talk to you about, but I care about you enough that I want to engage you in conversation. So that means we're going to have some awkward encounters. Yeah. And then people realize, like, oh, he's just, like, he truly cares about me. He just don't know how to care about me in this season. Like, part of that is just, you have to sit in some awkward situations. You have to be willing to have some awkward encounters with people. Yeah. You have to introduce yourself to people sometimes who have been members of the church for 40 years, but you've just not met them yet. Yeah. I mean, I had that a ton at Lexington. Like, oh, hey, I'm Ryan, and they're like, oh yeah, I know, I've been a member here for 40 years. I'm like, I've heard you. We just never crossed paths, or I've probably shaken your hand, but I just forgot your name or whatever. Like it happens, and it's just the idea of again love. It does matter, and you can just. It changes. Yeah. It changes the way that you approach people when you look through the lens of that relationship versus the transaction.
Yeah. And I think, the love is at the heart of it. You have to do it because you love people and you love the Lord at the end of the day. There's a, scripture that says, essentially, I'm not going to quote it verbatim, but how can you love me whom you've never seen, but you don't love your neighbor who you see every day? Yeah. And so I think a lot of times, it's easy for us to fall back into our, I hate using the word clique, because I feel like a lot of people try to make that seem like it's negative to have people that you have close friends with. Even Jesus had that, it was the 12 apostles, but then even within that, there were 3 that he was really, really tight with. And so I don't have a problem with I don't have a problem with having close relationships. I encourage it. However, I think that it's important not to be comfortable with just having the people in your life that you have, in terms of extending yourself to make sure that somebody feels welcome in your space or somebody feels welcome in your church. I've been in churches where, same as you, never been in a situation where I was the guest speaker and nobody spoke to me, but I'll say I've been in church, I've seen in church and been in churches where it felt like it wasn't, there was no warmth, where it felt like, man, it's just kind of cold, And so, and it's not good. Yeah. And that's not the heart of Jesus. And at the end of the day, if you love the Lord, and we all know, and we all love the Lord, that is going to extend to people, and because that's what it's all about.
And churches are, are probably trying to, I don't know what the formula is on, are young adults looking more for community and that sense of love and belonging? Or are they looking more for a place of service? I would say it's almost two sides of the same coin, but I know for a long time in a ministry context I was in, I was willing to stay in it because I saw my impact of service.
Yeah.
Even though I was void of maybe the love and the community at the beginning, but I at least was like, well, I at least know what I'm doing is making a difference.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to stay here because if I'm not experiencing this sense of community and love, then I know that other people probably aren't either.
That's right.
And so I'm going to try to provide that for as many people as I can, even if I'm not being filled up how I feel like I should in that community bucket.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day that'll get better.
Yeah.
And it did.
Mm-hmm.
But churches have to figure out, how to not have not just young adults, but anybody who feels like they have to pour out at the risk of not being poured in that season or any season.
Yeah.
And that's tough. And it's tough to swing one way or the other. And so that's why I think it's important. Like we talked about the different layers of connectivity of small groups and different classes and outreach opportunities and just over communicating ways people can be involved.
Yeah.
Because the language of your church. When you stand up and say, Sister Margaret and the WMU are meeting on Tuesday at 9 a.m., then you're like, yeah, we have places for women to serve. Well, what about the young adult woman who didn't grow up in a Baptist church, who doesn't know Sister Margaret, doesn't know what WMU stands for, has to work at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday?
Yeah.
How does she get involved?
Yeah.
Or maybe she's a single mom and she's struggling through life and she would love to be a part of the women's ministry, but she has no child care. She doesn't have family that live around. She can't afford a babysitter.
Yeah.
What can your church do? I mean, and if she were to show up with her kid and the kid was crying, but she's trying to serve, would she be more like nose turned up at her?
Yeah.
Because, well, why is your kid here?
Yeah.
And again, it sounds petty, but it's a reality of where a lot of people are in our church. It's not that they don't want to. They have no idea how to get connected. And it just takes small efforts of love. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
That we care more about the we than the me.
That's right. That's right.
And
did you just make that up?
No, I think somebody wrote it somewhere. You'll have to check out the book. It sounds good, though.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Chances are, if I say something that sounds profound, I heard it or read it somewhere. So just assume that I'm quoting somebody. I just forgot who it was, but
that was good. I like that. I think again, love has to be at the center of it. Love has to be at the center of it. And again, I know you know what it is to be busy, Ryan. I know what it is to be busy. And the day-to-day grind of life can be overwhelming sometimes. But it doesn't take a lot of effort just to, put a smile on your face and shake a hand and just say, hey man, my name is so and so, I've never seen you here before, and hearing somebody's story. And that's where it starts, hearing somebody's story. At the top of this podcast, you just asked me my story, and that led me down this whole tangent. And I think that's a great place to start for people. Yeah. Just ask somebody their story, and they'll take it from there. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, you'll start to lay the first bricks of a foundation of a relationship.
And it helps you. It puts things into context, right, of why they maybe do the things they do or why they're approaching it the way they approach it, because you didn't know what all they've been through or what obstacles they're trying to overcome. And so, I mean, that's what it's all about. And I don't know, for the one who's listening, if you've done a lot with us at the mission board or if, this is kind of your first connection with us, but I feel like I know Lorenzo's heart. I know my heart of really the reason that we're doing this is because we love and care about the local church.
That's right.
And, the mission board is here to serve churches.
Yeah.
And, I could be doing something that was less stress for more money than ministry, for sure. And you can probably relate to that, the person listening. But the reason that you do it is because you love and care about the gospel. And so that's why we're doing this. That's why we're trying to provide resources. That's why we're having this conversation today, because not only are we young adults and not only are we in the midst of this young adult ministry, but we love and care about the young adults in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we want to see them come into a relationship with Jesus. We don't want them to walk through life, whether they're from Tennessee or they've moved in. I have a ton of young adults that are moving in from other states who weren't raised in the South and don't have the same Southern worldview as we have. And so we can look at that as a bad thing, or we can look at that as, you know what, God is bringing the nations to Tennessee, and we're going to figure out ways to love them, even though they may be different than us, even though they may think different than us. We care about them and we love them.
That's right.
And so, I think the statistic is somewhere 7 million in Tennessee, about 48 or so % of that. And so, we're looking at 3.5 or so million young adults in the state of Tennessee. So they're out there.
They're out there. It's a lot of people.
So are we building relationships with them?
Yeah.
Lorenzo, you got any last things before we wrap it up?
No, I think, the last thing I'll say is, hey, man, go out and talk to somebody this week. Go out and shake a hand this week, and see how you can impact somebody's life, because that new person that's coming to your church, man, they need to connect. I'll say this, growing up, I didn't know the importance of community. I heard it all the time, community. But I didn't realize it until I was in a situation where I didn't have it. And so, be that community for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Find ways that you can just have a practical way of showing love. Maybe it is writing those letters. Maybe what you need to set a goal is, I'm going to write 5 letters. When's the last time you received a handwritten letter? Like, that'd be personal, right?
That would be pretty insane.
Write a handwritten letter to somebody and just tell them how much they've meant to you.
Yeah.
Or, even shoot the text to them or whatever and just say, hey, thinking about you, praying for you today. Like, man, anytime I get texts like those, it makes my whole day.
Yeah.
And it's so simple to do.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm excited. Thank you for jumping on, talking about love for a little bit. Thank you for joining us. Make sure, again, to like, share, subscribe. Keep on the lookout for other podcasts we're dropping. Thank you for your gifts through the cooperative program and the Golden Offering for Tennessee Missions, because without those, this podcast wouldn't be possible. Lorenzo, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Talking about the podcast, talking about love. Special shout out to Colby Mike for editing and engineering this. Until we see you again, go win Tennessee for Jesus.
Peace.
See ya.